Throughout the history of athletic competition, we have always been putting to the test of man's physical ability versus another man's physical ability and who has the greater strength and power and force or speed. However, in terms of recent athletic competitions, and most specifically the Olympic Games, certain technologies have been introduced, and these are mostly regarding those of prosthetic legs that amputated individuals or Paralympic athletes are using to function and compete in athletic activities. However, there's multiple research initiatives going on that are trying to decide if Paralympic athletes possess an equivocal or greater athletic ability to those of able-bodied individuals because of the certain technologies they are using. This became very controversial during the 2012 Summer Olympic Games because of a certain man known as the Blade Runner. His actual name is Oscar Pistorius, and he is a South African track and field athlete, and he was born without certain functioning bones in his lower legs and feet, and at a very young age had both his legs amputated right around the knee, and as a result was given prosthetic legs. He became very interested in running because it was sort of a rehab sort of activity for him, and he was actually given certain prosthetics that are called blades, which is where he gets his nickname from, and they're in the shape of a J, and that's what he uses to run in his track events. And a lot of athletes claim that running against Oscar is like running against a giant pair of scissors because that's what it sounds like as he sprints down the track because of the blades that he's using and like the dynamic powers of them. For this reason, Oscar was very successful as he competed as a Paralympian because while he does have very useful prosthetic legs, he also contains a lot of athletic ability and a lot of determination. So he trained very, very hard to get himself to where he is and to become the successful athlete he is today. However, the Paralympics were not a suitable competitive field for him. He was winning sprinting events by seconds, and in terms of track and field, that's a big deal because usually you only win by fractions of a second. So he felt that he was eligible to be competing in the able-bodied Olympics in 2012. So he actually pushed really hard to compete in the 2012 Summer Olympic Games in London. However, he received a lot of negative pushback, and a lot of people did not want him competing because they felt that he was at an unfair advantage because of the technology of his legs. There were certain governing committees that kind of try to keep the Olympic Games fair and back to their roots of man versus man ability, not man versus man technological competitive like playing fields. That's not what the Olympics were made for. And certain competitive games don't want other individuals competing against technological advancements that make it as if the games aren't fair. So the International Amateur Athletics Federation was in charge of rulemaking for the 2012 Summer Olympic Games, and they deemed that Oscar's prosthetic legs worked sort of like springs and therefore did not make him eligible as an athlete for the able-bodied Olympics because they gave him an advantage. They found that he could run 20% faster and 20% harder than any other athlete because each push that he made as he stepped along the track was 20% more powerful than any other athlete running. For this reason, he got a lot more speed. Oscar did not agree with this. He felt that he was actually at a disadvantage and was making the best of his situation, therefore proving his athletic ability. He had multiple scientists put in research initiatives and look into the use of his technology to see if he actually could be eligible to compete against able-bodied individuals. They did not find anything significant deeming him at an advantage, but they also found that there were things that put him at disadvantage. For example, he doesn't possess joints, so like we can move our wrist, we can move our ankle the same way. He can't do that because he has fixed blades that do not move in like lateral or rotational movements. So that's a disadvantage. Additionally, he cannot get in the low stance that track athletes can get in to start their running and then to increase in height to limit friction. He must start in an upright stance and has to kind of bounce to gain momentum, and then he can sprint down the track. This made it very difficult for him to be successful out of the start gate. So for this reason, there was no like actual ruling, granting him advantageous or not, and therefore he could compete, and he was actually very, very successful. I found this important because it kind of opens up the question of where are the Olympic Games going to go and how is technology going to be defined. In the future, people are talking about genetically modifying individuals or creating bionic body parts such as arms or legs. It's kind of, Oscar opens up that question of where can the line be drawn and how do we keep the core Olympic values always to the core of the games, and what technological advancements will and will not be allowed. So thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something.